Hi, I'm Jessica Peltz-Zatulove. I'm a partner at MDC Ventures, where we're investing in all early-stage digital media and marketing tech companies. So because we're a corporate VC, we actually invest off the balance sheet, so we didn't need to raise a dollar. So corporate venture funds are actually a lot different than traditional institutional funds. So if you want a little bit of trivia facts about the origins and how it started, it's actually been around for decades and decades and decades. The first example that we have of it is actually DuPont investing in General Motors. So this is back in 1914. DuPont was obviously a manufacturer of chemicals and plastics, and during the war they had the foresight that automobiles are more in demand. So they had started a relationship with this budding company, General Motors, and they recognized that if they could put money into General Motors as a startup, it would accelerate the demand for their products, because they were buying artificial leather and plastics and paint from them. So it's kind of this first example of the symbiotic relationship of corporate VC that's really a great case study for today. So for us, we are, first and foremost, we're a global holding company for advertising agencies. We own some of the top advertising agencies in the world, including 72andSunny, Crispin & Porter, Anomaly, Assembly. So our core job here is we are helping Fortune 500 brands in the capacity of their creative strategy, media strategy, branding, communications, PR, and everything in between. So our corporate venture arm is really designed to be strategic. We are specifically investing in early stage digital media and marketing tech companies that are addressing the needs of what we call the modern CMO. So our core role is to be helpful to our partner agencies to help them understand and identify what are some of these trends transforming the advertising agencies. So our investment thesis is all early stage companies, pre-seed, seed, Series A companies addressing the needs of the modern CMO. So we typically are looking across things on 4 main buckets. So first, we think a lot about this concept of responsible intelligence. You know, last year was just such a year of just consumer awakening around data privacy. So with that, we believe becomes a lot of innovation and new business models. So we're really excited about some of these permission-based business models around data collection that have a mutual benefit around for both the consumer and the brand. We look at a lot of stuff around next generation content. Obviously, because we own advertising agencies, we're constantly trying to find what is the next thing, what is the next interesting way that brands can communicate more efficiently with their consumers. So we look at a lot around voice, we look at a lot around audio and video and content and AR and VR, and what are some of these ways that are going to create new experiences, new ways for consumers to experience the brand. We look a lot around commerce, but not the way you would think about it. We don't do anything B2C. So when we think about what does that next generation of commerce look like, for brands, we really segment it out into a few main buckets. So number one, we look at a lot of what we call digital identity infrastructure. It used to be that we could just transact on a website or in store. But now you can really transact anywhere. So we're really interested in some of these tools that are enabling new channels for brands to purchase. So interesting things around smart speakers, interesting things around social. There's all these new ways for consumers to purchase products. That's where we want to be. Also really interested in emerging search, visual search, voice search. So you know, we think a lot about, especially as voice commerce rises, it's projected to be an $80 billion industry by 2023. How are consumers going to discover products? There's going to be this sense of urgency to become the default with voice commerce. So we're thinking a lot about what are those new forms of product discovery. And then we look a little bit around personalized customer service. So how do you create something that feels really authentic and real and personalized to the consumer? And then the last piece, we're spending a little bit of time in the blockchain space and understanding in a world that is arguably becoming more decentralized, what role are brands going to play and how does it make sense for them to participate? working in venture capital is the best job. You constantly get to surround yourself with people that want to change the world, and you get to hear these new ideas and these new problems people want to solve. So I love that VC is such a human business. I don't have a traditional path into VC. I didn't come from a finance background, so I'll share that in a minute. But when people say, how did you get into VC? I genuinely believe that there are skills and there's character traits. Skills you can learn, VC skills you can learn. The character traits of being a good VC, of genuinely enjoying helping other people, thinking about your network holistically, figuring out what connections you can make, that can't be taught. And that's something I personally love and thrive on. So my road into VC is a little non-traditional. I spent the first 10 years of my career on the customer side, so I grew up in the media industry. Specifically, I spent 9 years on the agency side where I was running the integrated strategy for a lot of Fortune 500 brands. H&M, Gucci, Puma, 20th Century Fox, Verizon. I was really fortunate to be running Verizon Wireless's integrated print and digital strategy back in 2009 to 12. And looking back, that was just such a huge inflection point for mobile. We hated the iPhone because it was locked into AT&T at the time. I was part of the team that launched the Android device with this Droid Does campaign that we thought only millennial males would buy. But what that really enabled me to do is to have a front row seat in terms of understanding how consumer behavior was changing. So that got me interested in emerging technology. The New York startup ecosystem at that time was just starting to blow up. ERA was just launching. I started mentoring startups on the side, helping them get their first customers, and just got the bug. So at the agency, I became the expert that, was tracking adoption around mobile. I did the first ever tablet sponsorships with timing for Verizon Wireless. And once I started working with startups, I just realized that this is the future. This is the future of advertising, and my background as a marketer can be so helpful to them. So I wanted to get operating experience at a startup. So I got the bug, and I joined an early stage startup for a couple years back in 2012. So we were really the first innovation boutique to help connect brands and startups to get their first customers. So we were working with brands like Mondelez and Kraft and Unilever to provide more of a context around the startup space and match them up with different technology solutions to get a proof of concept, to figure out how to scale, how to merchandise, how to work with innovation. And through that experience, I started building out a partnership network of just hundreds of different venture funds, shared workspaces, incubators, accelerators from around the world. And it was through that network that I ultimately was recommended into this role at MDC Ventures and transitioned to the venture community about 5 years ago. So it was a great fit because my vision for corporate VC and best practices is that our investment thesis should be fueled by these white spaces and these pain points that we see in the market as domain experts. And we should be testing and learning with the companies in our portfolio. So it creates huge value to the startup founders because we are the customer. So we can help them with commercial agreements. We can help them understand their competitive advantage and their marketing position. And for us, we're learning about technology trends that normally wouldn't have gotten to us as a customer for probably 12 to 24 months because we're investing so early stage. So there's a benefit to both, but we see it as really strategic to our business, and we see a lot of the value that the founders get from working with us. That's a good question. I mean, the obvious answer is obviously my daughter and my family because, how can you not? But I would say, especially now, even my daughter is 16 months old, and I want to be investing in building companies in the future that will make it a better place, that will create jobs, that will contribute to society, that will be providing meaningful benefits to solve fundamental human needs in this modern world. So what drives me? I mean, it's just this like constant curiosity of how things are changing. I mean, I look at something like Uber and Lyft. So I was in, I remember I was flying back from SF. I don't remember how long ago this was. I was flying back from SF, got in to JFK probably around 1 a.m. Taxi line, terrible. So obviously, I called my Uber. Uber came, he offered me candy, which is like the best when they offer you candy. And I remember I started falling asleep, and I was just thinking to myself, I just got into a car. It's 1 a.m. I just got into a car with a stranger, took candy from him, and I totally feel safe and comfortable that I'm gonna get home okay. And that change in consumer behavior now compared to even 6-7 years ago, it is just so inspiring and interesting to me. And so to be able to work with some of these entrepreneurs and these technologies to change society, change consumer behavior, it's just a really amazing place to be. So I'd say I first came into the tech community around 2011, 2012. I came into VC in 2014. In New York, there's been huge changes. I mean, I think we get more and more wins on the board, whether it was obviously MongoDB or ZocDoc or Foursquare. There's so much pride, or AppNexus. There's so much pride in the New York startup ecosystem that it's just been so fun to be a part of. Everyone is collaborative. Everybody wants to work together to succeed. Everybody wants to solve problems and build big businesses. So there's been a huge change in the number of accelerators in the city. There's been a huge change in the number of venture funds in the city. And there's been a huge change in terms of the number of women in the city. I genuinely believe that New York will be the market that changes the gender balance in tech, both on the venture side and on the startup side, because it's just such a special place. There's so much energy in the city. So I love being a part of it, but just seeing where the startup ecosystem was from 8-9 years ago to today, it's so exciting to be a part of. Good question. I mean, every day is a challenge. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, so I think the challenge is always thinking really objectively about why now as a market timing, and you really need to find that right product market fit, but also founder market fit. And sometimes you meet an entrepreneur who's just phenomenal and you want to back him or her, but the market might not be there yet. And so I think for me, some of the challenges is always just wanting to be helpful to everybody, but recognizing that you need to stay really disciplined about either, what is your thesis or is now the right market timing, but then also balance that with wanting to be helpful and providing constructive feedback back to the entrepreneurs. So I'd say those are probably challenges. I mean, my background is client service, so I feel like I naturally see venture capital as an extension of that, only instead of working with marketers, our clients are the entrepreneurs, they are the founders. I just kind of sit in this hybrid role where we're working with both. What do I just true to my sisters? I mean, you gotta work hard and be helpful to people. And I think genuinely enjoying what you do is a big plus. A lot of times it doesn't feel like work. Like I generally enjoy helping the founders, collaborating with my co-investors, working with my portfolio founders, helping brands understand some of these trends that they're trying to understand to future-proof their own businesses. So to me, I think a lot of the success can come from being helpful and creating community and creating some of those connection points that I mentioned. I do think that venture capital is a very human business. So the more that you're able to grasp that and recognize that you can't fire an investor, you're kind of stuck with them. So I kind of think about this in the context of that there's a lot that happens in life throughout the duration of a company's life cycle. You can get married, you can have a baby, you can get a divorce. There's so many different things that can impact your ability to build a business. So whenever you can become that trusted advisor and really have that transparent, raw conversation, it's almost like I don't have to like you today, but I still love you. We'll get through this. Next week will be better. And I think just having that really supportive but open and honest, transparent relationships with your founders and your co-investors is hugely important. I look back and every time I've been presented a challenge, I try to reframe my thinking to have it be positive. So when I first moved to the city, this was back in 2003, after college. I grew up in Minnesota. I went to school in Indiana. I was convinced that I was going to move to Chicago and work at this media agency. And I got all the way to final round interviews, and I was like, of course I'm going to get this job. How could I not get this job? Didn't get the job. Was devastated. But that's what really pushed me, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just put a pin in the Midwest, and I'm gonna go to New York. I knew nobody here. Certainly didn't have any industry contacts. And sometimes I feel like I rise to the challenge, and I'm just like, let me prove you wrong. And so after I graduated college, I ended up having 3 job offers from top media agencies here in the city, and I never really looked back since. Even when I left my corporate job back in 2012 to go to a startup, I went from being a VP at a global agency to a 3-person scrappy startup where we didn't even have an office. So I feel like sometimes when you're presented with a challenge, you just have to have faith in yourself that it will work out, and you just have to keep your head up and keep plugging away, because it's the best way to do it. There's a lot of changes that need to happen in the VC community. I think that one thing that I obviously continue to champion is just the number of women in the community, continuing to elevate the voices of those women in the community, driving collaboration within the community, both with women investors and our obviously male counterparts. I'm continuing to champion, helping women raise funds, helping women raise bigger funds. It's so important for women to be able to invest over the life cycle of the company, not just at the seed and Series A, but also at the Series B and growth stage. So how can we start to find resources or initiatives to make that happen? But I think that I love being in the New York tech ecosystem. It's so collaborative, it's so inclusive. It's such a great cast of characters, of smart people, diverse people. That I think the more that we can continue to celebrate all those different voices, just the more successful we'll all be, and in turn the better companies will get funded. What's next for me? I'll have to stay tuned for that one. But, we're building so many great things here at MDC Ventures. We're really only just getting started. We're continuing to evolve our investment thesis. We're expanding our advisory board. We're looking to invest in more companies. So we'll see. We're continuing to program more content for our founders and also for our brand clients. So there's a lot to talk about. I want to be somebody that works hard and recognizes that I want to give back to my community. I want to be helpful to founders. I want to help brands succeed. I want to help a diverse community of investors and founders succeed. And I want to be investing in building companies that are transformative to solve fundamental human needs in this modern world we're in. So that's what I'm going to keep doing.